Hello, everyone. Funny story, I didn't realize I was in the big kids room, so I'm glad that I found that out about 15 minutes ago. So, well, we are going to start with how to get more done by working smarter. But we're going to start with a story of the mighty lion. The mighty lion roaming the savannah, looking for something to eat. Now, option one, a svelte antelope. Spry, meaty, muscular, it's like the keto diet for lions. Option B, a field mouse. Tiny, like a Pringle, right? Once you pop, you can't stop. Tastes good, but, there's some consequences to Pringles versus keto. So, let us look at the tail of the tape. Now, with the field mouse, 30 calories, easy enough, but still requires some effort to chase down that little mouse. But negative net calories, because it's actually going to take more effort to hunt the mouse than it will consume. On the other hand, the antelope, 250,000 calories. I actually did Google that. Like, how many calories is an antelope? And it's achievable, but it's gonna take some hustle, some grind. But if the lion is able to snag that antelope, feed the entire pride. So it's faced with two options: path to oblivion, death by Pringles, or survive and thrive. Now, here's the rub. Every single one of you is the lion, right? And every day, as Ed Sheeran says, you are faced with the decision of the field mouse and the antelope. So, we have what's called $10 work. The field mouse, inbox zero, Slack, organizing Kindle highlights, managing your social media. And then you've got 10K work. Setting your goals, learning how to say no, planting seeds for future projects, cultivating relationships. What are you going to do? First, in the words of Jay-Z, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Khe Hy. I'm the creator of the Rad Reads blog, an email newsletter that serves 35,000 high-achieving professionals. We have two businesses. We teach the online course Supercharge Your Productivity. And we have a consulting business called the Rad Studio where we teach all of these lessons to small businesses. And our mission is simple. We want to help you lead more productive, examined, and joyful lives. So we think those three things really work together. We're going to talk about that today. So here's a few things that you can't unsee. I'm into skate and surf culture. Vans is the square root of ANS. The upside-down Chicago Bulls logo is a robot reading a book. I know, right? And once you organize your tasks according to 10K, 1K, 110, even if you don't do it, you cannot unsee it. So, what is this thing, this matrix? It's a simple matrix for prioritization. So you've got two axes. You've got a vertical axis of leverage and a horizontal axis of skill. And as you jump through every quadrant, the value of an activity increases, right? So $10 work is work you can do hungover. We've all done that, right? Inbox zero, replying to YouTube comments, Canva work, right? You can do it hungover. 10K work, deep work, Cal Newport style, right? So we're going to walk through every single one of those quadrants, and I want to help you build your perfect portfolio of these four different types of activities. So let's look at what the difference. Let's split it between low value on one side, high value on the other side, right? So on one side you have efficiency, on the other side you have effectiveness. On one side you have execution, just doing stuff. On the other side you have growth. Hungover work, deep work. Dopamine releasing work that's hard to define. It feels kind of awkward. And then are you playing the short term or are you playing the long game? And a topic that's come up over and over again, are you struggling through your days or are you gliding through them with ease? right? So you have these 4 different quadrants, and we're going to go through each of these. Now, I want you to meet Courtney. This is real. Courtney, raise your hand. We were talking yesterday about this, and we were just in an amazing branding workshop with Ampersand, and we were talking about all these different things. So Courtney is a film producer in LA. So we're talking about like TikTok versus Reels and better CTAs, and she's got a small email list that she's trying to grow to get attention to her films. That's $10 work. $100 work, there's these aggregators for films. And so are you talking to all the aggregators? Is your film getting the exposure that it needs? Okay, it's a little bit more valuable of an activity to get the end goal, views of her films. $1,000 work, learning new types of films, film patterns. Films on Amazon, I learned from Courtney, have a different, they have like YouTube type metrics. Like you don't get paid if people don't watch the whole movie. So it might change the way you write a script, right? Important stuff if you're making films on YouTube. But what's the highest skill, highest leverage thing that Courtney could be doing amongst all of these different activities? I just asked her a simple question. It's Courtney. Courtney, do you remember the question?
I think you said, like, what would make the biggest difference?
Yep. What is the end goal? And Courtney's end goal was, I want to work with great actors and actresses. Right? Stars. I want to work with stars. Yeah. She wants to work with stars. And so if we went back to the previous slide, and we looked at all these things, TikTok, Reels, CTAs, platforms, new film patterns, how do you work with stars, Courtney? And we realized that she needed to learn how to fundraise, how to raise money. None of these things on that list matter for her end goal of working with stars. It doesn't fucking matter whether it's TikTok versus Reels. And asking that question is an example of Courtney's 10K work. So, I want to show you a little bit of my 10K work journey. I started on Wall Street, as Haley said. I got a bunch of promotions. I didn't know it was called 10K work back then, but I got a bunch of promotions, and eventually I left at age 35. I then started an entrepreneur, solo creator business almost 8 years ago. I try to surf 2 hours every day. That's one of my end goals, surf 2 hours every day, no meetings till 11:30. Now we have a team, we're building a company. We don't send any emails internally, and I check Slack maybe 3 times a day, and we have 30-hour work weeks, unlimited vacation. All of this is anchored by this philosophy. Our team uses this common language. We start a project, we're like, what's the 10K question we're trying to ask here? What's the highest leverage, highest skill activity that each one of us should be working on? So let's go through how you can actually do that. Now, I know that there's global audiences, there's people in different parts of their career. It's not actually about the dollar value. The dollar value is just for you to get an anchoring, a framing as to what I'm trying to talk about. So think about it as force multipliers, right? $10 work, hungover work is checking your email, replying to YouTube comments. What's something that's 10 times more impactful than that, right? Think about that. What's something 10 times more impactful than checking your email? Maybe it's like writing an SOP, right? Maybe it's setting up a Notion dashboard for your team, leveling up, making a good Asana setup for project management. Okay, it's 100 times more impactful than checking your email. Maybe it is learning that new skill. In Courtney's example, how to write and produce films that are geared more towards streaming platforms. What's something 1,000 times more impactful than getting to inbox zero? Every single one of you has an activity that is 1,000 times more impactful than getting to inbox zero. It's just incumbent on you to identify what that is and then relentlessly pursue and protect the ability to do that. All right, so one of the key axes is leverage. And Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. Now, first, I don't want you to confuse efficiency and leverage, right? Efficiency is squeezing water out of a stone. It's the land of text expanders and snippets. No offense, Nathan Barry. Snippets are great, but they're not going to create your dream business. right? That's efficiency, squeezing water out of the stone. We want you to figure out what is your highest leverage activity, the thing that amplifies your unique skills, right? And one way to think about it, if you've ever read the book, The E-Myth, is what are you working on, right? Now, this is the entrepreneur crowd. So, are you working in your business? Or are you working on your business, right? Are you the COO or the CEO? Because we've got to play both roles often. And we don't play enough of the CEO role, or even bigger, the board, the chairperson of the board. You can extend that. Are you working in your career? PowerPoints and reports and TPS reports and OKRs and so on? Or are you working on your career, finding mentors, learning new skills, building a presence for yourself? You can look inwards into your household, into your personal lives. Are you working in your relationship? The logistics of parenting, schedules and pickups and all that stuff that's of course necessary. Or are you working on your relationship? Our marriage therapist gave us this scary fact. She said, a lot of marriages end in the first couple years because of conflict, but then there's a second wave that ends after 10 years because of a loss of passion, right? So are you working on your relationship? Right? That's the ultimate 10K work of staying married. All right, so we're going to go through each of these categories. We're going to make this like creator style because we're all really speak the same language here. So $10 work. $10 work is the dopamine machine. It's a work that you can do hungover, right? Inbox zero. Organizing. Who labels their emails? Come on. I see a few email labelers. Adam Grant said that labeling your emails takes on average 67 hours a year and makes your emails harder to find because there's this thing called search. So organizing your emails. The 3 S's, swipe, swooshing, scrolling, right? I don't need to tell you about why that's $10 work. And then for my more finance-oriented people, formatting spreadsheets, whether it's row stripes, column widths, decimal places, and setting the print area. And of course, since we're doing this creator style, we've got replying to comments, picking hashtags, and as Kara said so lovely, Canva rabbit holes. Who has been down that Canva rabbit hole? That is $10 work. Now, I want you to, Nir Eyal wrote this in his book, Indistractable. He writes, attention management is pain management. I want you to sit with that. Like, if you're having trouble focusing, attention management is pain management. I always ask, why do we why do we doom scroll? Like seriously, why do we doom scroll? What's actually happening when we go through that mindless act of doom scroll, which I do all the time? So, a few theories. Is the task poorly defined? It's often a starting place in these nebulous kind of careers we've all chosen for ourselves. Imposter syndrome, perfectionism, trouble starting, fear of failing, right? Next time you go into that Canva rabbit hole, I want you to ask yourself, why am I really doing this? What is behind this activity, right? Is there a pain, a lingering hurt, as one of my coaches call it? Or plan B, you might just be tired. Oftentimes when I'm doing $10 work, I should just go to sleep. That is probably the easiest answer to get over that $10 work. All right, let's get to the sneaky category of $100 work. That is the danger zone because it's taking that dopamine and leveraging it. So it's making it feel so much more spectacular, so much juicier, right? This is the land of productivity apps and landing page generators and funnels and tagging and all this stuff that you could spend entire quarters working on. But is it really bringing you closer to that 5-year vision? Remember, efficiency is not the same thing as effectiveness. This is where instead of squeezing the lime with your hand, you get the lime squeezer, but you're still squeezing a lime, right? You're just doing it a little faster, right? And that's where we run into our familiar friend, shiny new toy syndrome, shiny new tool syndrome, shiny new project syndrome, right? It's so enticing to just switch to this. I was like, oh, you know what the problem with my business is? I'm still using the old Google Analytics. Let's take a 2-month project to switch to GA4, right? I mean, ultimately you need to do it, but that is just leveraged dopamine. That is still running in place. And you can always, if you find yourself doing that $100 work, your Notion, I mean, I teach Notion courses, so I gotta be careful here, but if you find yourself in these Notion rabbit holes, ask yourself, what's the 5-year vision for this business, right? Use this like future casting exercise, write it out, and look at the thing you're doing. Like, will the best Notion setup ever get me to this 5-year vision I have for my business? If you answer no, then that's a sign that it's probably $100 work. Now we gotta do it. We have to upgrade to GA4 at some point, but it's not gonna change our business. Of course, these are the different types and online courses as all of us teach them. We know that we take them, we teach them. That is one of the ultimate $100 activities. So, how does $100 work sneak up? It sneaks up in tools, text expanders, snippets, Roam, all of that. It's systems, getting things done, YNAB, Zapier, bullet journaling, right? You feel so productive, but you're not making a dent on your business. So what are the $100 tools, $100 work at this conference, right? Social media. Should I use Tweet Hunter or Typefully? Podia or Teachable? Lead Pages or Unbounce, right? That is the $100 work of the creator. Learning Figma, that's one I'm like, everything would be better if I knew Figma, right? No, it won't. All right, $1,000 work. So $1,000 work is a damn good life, right? If you think about the axes, it's you have a unique skill, but there's no leverage, right? So a very simple way of thinking about 1K work, $1,000 work, is it's the thing you're damn good at. So for me, it's writing, it's teaching. I do a lot of that. It should be the lion's share of my work. It keeps the lights on, and it like justifiably keeps the light on. Like my Notion setup doesn't keep the lights on, my writing keeps the lights on. And you spend a lot of time in that $1,000 work category. There's specialization, there's expertise, there's dedication. It's a critical part of your job. In fact, you will even see in certain instances, some people get paid $1,000 an hour. Legal, like a top bankruptcy lawyer, will make $1,000 an hour. That is the example of unique, specialized skill that commands a market premium and can lead to a good life. But there's no leverage there, right? If that lawyer wants to take 6 months off, unless they have savings, the $1,000 an hour stops, right? It's time for money. And again, a lot of us are probably in that, like, I'm the only person that can write this post. I'm the only person that can teach this course. I'm the only person that can film this YouTube video, right? So you have to do that $1,000 work. It's the engine for your business. It's why people pay you. But there's something beyond that. First, though, let's look at some other ways, like you can grow your 1K skills, right? Public speaking. When I worked on Wall Street, I got railed in my yearly reviews each time. You're a terrible presenter, you're a terrible speaker. I've given this talk 100 times. Whether I'm terrible or great at it, that's for you to decide. But public speaking, these are skills, these are a few skills that can expand the value, your value, that transcend different industries. So public speaking is an easy one. Being a good writer is an easy one. Learning how to sell, that took me a long time to figure out, isn't easy. Everything's a sale. Your Tinder profile is a sale. Your investment committee memo is a sale. Everything is a sale. Learning the art of persuasion and selling is a universal skill, especially for creators. Technical sensibility, it's like being able to interact with designers and developers and so on, Zapier type stuff. Design, I'm a big believer in design. Good design communicates trust, negotiation. The list could go on, but the point that I want you to see is in this slide, there are ways to just improve your skill set and thus improve the value that you bring to your customers, your students, and your audiences, right? But it's not the end goal. these skills also make you anti-fragile. So then there's this category, right? So I've built it up, 10K work, right? What is this magical beast of 10K work, right? So here's how you can get started. It always starts with other people. Elevating others, whether it is a contractor that you work with, a virtual assistant, your first marketing hire, your first operations hire, or the team that you manage. Recruiting, training, engaging, and retaining is the easiest way to add leverage. Now, I don't want this to sound so sterile to remove the fact that there's a human connection with all this, but great leaders are highly leverageable assets, right? Because they can inspire people behind their vision, they can get the best work out of people, they can recruit them into their organizations, they can keep them in their organizations, and they can motivate them towards their product vision, right? The ability to do all of that is 10K work. It's also looking, this is a more relevant piece to the folks in this room, is looking for the one-to-many opportunities, particularly in the land of digital. And then there's the behavioral side, right? When I said attention management is pain management, the thing about 10K work is you don't know if it's working, right? It's a lot of seed planting, and you've got to see it develop over time. It is investing, as Ben Hardy said, investing in that future self of yours. So here, not a comprehensive slate of example, but a few different ways of finding that leverage, combining that unique skill with that amplified one-to-many impact. So obviously I started with talent. Talent is, and again, it could be as simple as a part-time contractor that helps you on social, all the way, we have a team of 5 people, 2 product managers, operations person, and marketing person. Distribution, right? Mr. Beast being a great example of it, but if you look at the way Mr. Beast thinks about distribution, it's really scientific, right? Obviously, there's the main channel, but then he translates all of the audio into all these different languages. That's leverage. You created the thing, you hire the translators, you produce the translation, and now you're translating it across 20, 25 different languages, right? There's the Beast Burger, right? That's an outsourced business. That's the Phantom Kitchens. Right? He's not setting, he's just leveraging his brand, leveraging his operational expertise to create a hamburger business. There's replication, right? This is something really powerful for the people in this room, right? The marginal cost of your next product is close to 0 for many of us, right? There's some real power in that where I could sell 100 more seats of my course and it would only cost me half an extra employee. So there's leverage built into this replicability of my business model. I'm not going to go through each of these, but the big idea, 10K work, right? People write blog posts about 10K work, right? People are doing my marketing doing our marketing on our behalves because it's a big idea. Think about your other favorite big idea: deep work, anti-fragile, radical candor, GTD, black swans, right? Other people are propagating your idea forward into the world, right? And I worked with Billy to come up with this big idea. It's taken a lot of reps on A, finding it, and then B, how do you propagate it, kind of throughout the interwebs. Pricing, I'd love to use the Amazon example. I think it was earlier this year. Raise your hand if you know how much you're paying for Amazon Prime today. So about 5 people, I assume 50 have it in this room. They raised their price. I think $20-$30 sometime in Q1. It's like $20 billion windfall for them, or $10 billion windfall for them. None of you even noticed. Talk about leverage, huh? And then brand, I always think about the Slack aubergine color or the Tiffany's blue or the UPS brown. You just start to see there's leverage. And so 10K work can be a lot of different things. But again, there's always something special here. It's your unique ability amplified, right? So if you think about my big idea of 10K work, it was my unique ability to come up with these different ways to mash up this productivity framework and then find a way to amplify it into the world. Now, Very mundane. I've been kind of shitting on email this whole presentation, but many mundane activities can also be 10K work. It's not the activity itself. You have to look at the unique attributes of this activity. So sending an email can be 10K work, right? And I bet for every single one of you, there is someone at this conference that a well-timed email could have an extremely amplificative effect on your business, potentially generating you $10,000 or more over the long term. Who's that email to? When are you going to send it? Every single one of you has at least one person here that can have a multiplicative impact on your business in a mutually beneficial way. Find them, communicate with them, genuinely be their friends, and see what happens, right? So it's not just, I'm not saying go be Mr. Beast. I'm saying look around the room and figure out, who's the important person that is mutually beneficial. Again, mutually beneficial being the key word here. And if you're still stuck with that, I just heard that there's some bankers out there that are going to teach you how to sell your business. So, at the minimum, go talk to them. So I want to wrap with 10K work is more than just a matrix and a productivity tagging system. It really is a mindset. And so I want to take two categories. I want to zoom. We've been talking about landing pages and Mr. Beast and all that stuff, but I want to take it to very real life examples. So let's do some 10K Jeopardy. So we'll start with fitness, right? So what's you want to get in shape. What's the $10 work? It's like going to, Reebok or Lululemon and getting your gear, right? $10 work. Feels good. $100 work. Downloading a training plan, or an app or, Strava or one of those things, right? $1,000 work is doing the thing, right? Going on a 3-mile run. What's the 10K work? Maybe it's, why do I want to be healthy, right? Is it longevity? Is it energy? Is it vanity? Asking that question might actually change your entire conception of fitness. If it's longevity, going for a 10-mile run might not actually be the best thing if longevity is your end goal. It might actually be just walking or sleeping an extra 20 minutes. Right? The 10K work is figuring out, why do I want this thing? Why is this thing important to me? And what is the most amplified, leveraged way to get there? All right, let's go to marriage. Emptying the dishwasher. That is the ultimate 10K work. And I read that 50% of marriages end over dishwasher fights, which, attention management is pain management. Emptying the dishwasher fights are not fights about emptying the dishwasher. We all know that, right? So $10 work is emptying the dishwasher. $100 work, I do this because I forget. A recurring task for Valentine's Day reservation that triggers 14 days in advance on February 1st. And it says in parentheses, because you always screw this up in my task manager, right? So that's better than emptying the dishwasher. But it's not it. It's not it. There's more, right? What's $1,000 work, right? We talked about that passion question. Maybe it's putting all the pieces into place so that you can take that 3-day vacation with your partner or your spouse without kids. Those of you, especially with young kids, you know how hard that is, right? Especially if you don't live near family. You fly your parents out, and you got all your Canva files to update. So $1,000 work is that plan annual kids getaway. So then what's the $10,000 work of a healthy marriage, of a happy marriage? Is it understanding what's that root source of resentment behind the dishwasher conversation? Is it tapping into that rekindled passion, after 10 years and, 10 years of logistics managing multiple kids? Is it redefining what the role of co-parenting means in your relationship, re-underwriting the rules, re-challenging them? Is it supporting a spouse so that one spouse gets their turn to shine when the first person got their turn to shine? I can't tell you the answer to that question, but you all have it in you, and that is the 10K question that you should be asking about your most important relationships. So, with that, I thank you all. I would love to answer any questions on this topic, systems, Notion, productivity, or my career as an entrepreneur. And I thank you. I guess we have the chat box. I have no idea when this thing ends, so. Billy.
Great job, buddy.
Thank you. You had a little hand in this.
Yeah, no, seriously, I love this. The idea of leverage is such an important topic, but it's very lofty, and you just do such a great job of bringing things down to earth. So seriously, thank you for this.
Oh, thank you, Billy.
My question is around something you said earlier about you don't always know if it's working. How can you better know that? Like, is there a way to listen in? Is there a way to have a feedback loop? And I can maybe give you an example to work with. This conference, for example, like people had a decision that they could make on how to spend their time, how to spend their money. So how do we know if this conference for us was 10K work?
Yes, great question. So it always starts, we call them 10K, it starts with a question, right? Questions, people use intention statements or values and so on, but it always starts with a question, right? Like the question I asked Courtney. We were talking about TikToks and Reels, but the question we were really meant to be talking about is what's the goal, right? And so there are a handful of questions that you can use to just kind of right-size yourself. It actually jives a lot with Kara's talk, which is like, what does it mean for me, right? So the question might be regarding this conference, what am I trying to get out of this conference? I mean, it sounds super obvious, but I bet, raise your hand if you actually ask yourself, what am I trying to, why am I here? Gotta go about half to 2/3. So you could ask that question, are you here for inspiration? Or are you here for tactics? There are two very different reasons to be here. Some people are here just for the human connection. This is all secondary, tertiary stuff, right? So to your starting point, I would start with well, why am I here, right? Are you here? Am I here for tactics, or am I here to get inspired? And so that would be one way to kind of start thinking about that. Another way is to really think about things in terms of bets and experiments. And so this is definitely I answered with a very kind of I answered a philosophical question with a very philosophical answer. I have the tendency to do that. But I can also answer it with a very tactical question, which might be, let's say your goal to come to this conference is tactics. And so then the question would be, well, what's the metric, right? Is it subscriber growth, revenue growth, so on? And then you could actually say to yourself, well, one of the biggest takeaways I have gotten from this conference is from Sam's talk is I have no idea what our CACs and our CLTVs and all of that. I know nothing about that stuff. And we have enough data, shame on me for not knowing. We have the data. We even have GA4. So the question that I am going to go is how can I make this actionable? Why is this important? Why are CACs and CLTVs? I need to answer that question for myself. Then I need to make it actionable. And then I'm going to seek to make it actionable with a small bet. And so that bet might be, I'm going to create a model that basically looks at the CLTV. We don't do paid ads, so I was thinking about this last night. I'm going to basically create a cost for all the content that I create. And that is going to turn into our customer acquisition costs because we don't pay for it. And then for a quarter, I'm going to try to track it and see what I learn. In a quarter, it might have just been a bunch of smoke and mirrors, like a lot of my projects. Or it might be holy shit, why did it take us 8 years to figure this out? And then we'll pivot at that quarter point. And we use quarters because they're like a little rounder and nicer to like get people aligned around a quarter milestone.
It seems like a review process goes hand in hand with 10K work.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a much longer conversation, but at the personal productivity level, we talk a lot about the fact that most of your tasks don't have due dates, right? And so your tasks, like be a good parent, be a good dad. That doesn't, it's definitely a task or project with a ton of related activities, right? Like reading books together and pickups and one-on-one time and, diving into questions of, adulthood or growing up, whatever. None of those have due dates, right? Because the rule, I'm going a little off topic here, but this is an important rule. The only time you're allowed to have a DUE date on a task is if failing to do that task by the due date has an immediate and severe penalty. So that's basically like paying your rent. It's like bills and taxes, basically, and insurance premiums, right? Everything else, and launch-related stuff, but most other things don't have DUE dates. And so what we do is we use fake due dates. We're like, well, this thing's due next Friday. Like, create my strategy document for Q3. It's due next Friday. I made myself a due date. My brain knows that that's complete horseshit. And it's not going to do it. I will pay all the bills that are due by next Friday because they have an immediate and severe penalty if I don't do it by then. But if I just kick the Q3 OKRs down the road for another 7 days, no one even knows. So that's where the review function comes in. Doing it at a corporate level is extremely important because there's so many more variables at play and so many different incentives and so many moving parts. So absolutely.
Great answer. Thank you.
Yes. In the blue shirt. Yes.
Easy toss.
Great talk, very timely. I was actually next week going to do a time study with my entire team. I have 12 team members. And so this question is team related and talking about, wanting to stay in 10K work and expressing to the team what that means and what that doesn't mean and what they think is 10K work and is not 10K work. So I would love to get your insights on how to protect that 10K work without sounding like a prick. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Because I think that my team, I'm pretty warm, open kind of person. And so it's like, Jordan wants to hear that I'm, doing this work and I have a quick question for her. And it's like, no, when it's silent from you, that actually brings me more peace.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a prick, right? So just curious about that.
It's an excellent question. I think that one of the great starting points of this framework or any frameworks is common language. So if you just have a common language is leverage, right? Because everyone knows what you're talking about and you don't have to repeat it. I mean, it comes from repetition. That's why Jeff Bezos in all of his shareholders' letters, he just says, it's day one. That is how you tell 70,000 Amazon employees, don't sit on your fucking laurels, right? It's day one. They say that everywhere. It's on signs. It's not like integrity, It's like, it's day one, right? That is the fire that they want in their corporate belly. It wouldn't work for me, but that's their corporate belly, so to each their own. But to answer your question, I mean, I would say, so once you have the common language, I think the other thing to be very clear is that a CEO's 10K work is very different than a VA's 10K work. And that's supposed to be that way, right? And it doesn't mean that their work is less valuable than your work. I mean, objectively, it is less valuable. You're the CEO, your work is by definition more valuable. But again, you don't have to get into that. But understanding that 10K work is, to use math terms, it's local. So it's local to your situation, as long as everyone will have those same 4 axes. Right? The VA could say, what's my unique skill? It might be creating processes and then finding a way to teach other people on the team to create processes as well as I create them. right? So that would be one way to just remind everyone that it's like no one's work is better than anyone else's. And then the third thing is everyone has a portfolio, right? Just because I'm the CEO, I still gotta write a lot of emails, right? I still, I play by, if there's a document to review, like that's part of the process. Like I reply on time, like that's, $100 work for me. And so, leading by example with that common language and also showing that everyone's portfolio will be different. You could zoom out and take like a Beyonce, like her 10K work is very different than the dancer on her troup's 10K work, but they all need to do it and they all care for the same reason.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. And the green shirt. Trying to remember the orders.
Thanks a lot, Khe.
Khe,
thank you. I had a question on asking questions around $10,000 work.
Mm-hmm.
I've run into a problem of specificity, and I think I get trapped in I'll think through all the details and then I become married to the idea. Well, now it has to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to train myself to step back and be comfortable with just having the question and letting the pursuit of the question guide the work. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
And so is the question, because in your question I hear a lot of control, like desire to control. And to control the outcome.
It's been a desire for control. Now I'm trying to walk that back.
Yeah.
Because I get caught in control. Mm-hmm. I'd like to release it.
Yeah.
And so how do you get to that point?
So I'll start with a very philosophical question: is what's behind your desire to control everything? And that's I'm sure there's a few control freaks in this room. So I encourage you to ask. It's about more than control.
Fear of death.
That's mine. Fear of death. My desire to control is fear of death or fear of irrelevance, or you could basically combine those two in one thing, and that's ego death. I am terrified of the death of my ego, so I would like to control things by pumping out content, right? But think about the banality of what I just said. I'm scared of my own death, so pumping out more content will make me feel less scared. Shouldn't I just deal with my fear of death and skip the content part? Right? So I think that with that, so I'll answer with tactics. I always give the 10K answer, which is the philosophical answer, and then I could give a tactics answer, which is the $10 or the $100 answer. But I think what's behind the control, for most people, it's even fear of death, fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear of eternal time. These are all kind of very, I'm a secular, they're kind of very secular angst, right? Manifested in the form of never-ending content. So that would be the philosophical question. The more kind of tactical thing would be to just let go of a sliver, right? And so there might be, I don't know, maybe there's someone on your team and you feel so strongly about the voice because you're the solo founder and no one can write in your voice and use a comma like you use a comma. And you're I'm gonna let Jill write this week's. Not in my voice, in Jill's voice, right? And again, as the CEO or the founder, you know, it's not like the sales email that will drive, $10,000 of sales. It's the weekly update, right? And so start it with a sliver, see how it feels. What you probably will find is that not only did you feel great that you didn't have to do the thing, but Jill actually did it better than you could have. And then from that point, you start to stack it, and then maybe then you're just not working anymore.
Thanks.
Yes, great question.
Would you talk about the role of discipline in sticking with 10K work? I can see myself being really excited about this idea and doing it really well for 30 days and then going after the dopamine hits.
Yeah. Dopamine tastes so good when it hits your lips. Okay, so I have a contrarian answer to this question, and it actually guides my philosophy for entrepreneurship. And my philosophy for entrepreneurship is actually, we didn't collaborate, but there are a lot of overlapping philosophies in Kara's talk before. But my guiding question is, what if it was easy? And so if something has struggle and resistance, or what I call thrashing, just like watching my 4-year-old try to like tread water, right? If there's thrashing, it's a sign that I should probably not do it. And some of you are going to say, you own the business, that's irresponsible. Or some of you might go a step further, business is meant to be hard. If it's not hard, you're not doing it right. Right? That's that's ingrained in like scarcity mindset, different religious beliefs, scarcity thinking, having parents who are immigrants. Like that belief is very deeply ensconced in many, many entrepreneurs' mindsets. So I take the approach that what if it was easy? So like what's very easy for me? Writing, things that involve words and so on. Where is there thrashing? Anything that involves Facebook. So like I'm just like not on Facebook and I'm not on Instagram. And you could say that that's it. I was telling someone yesterday, I was like, I feel like the Netscape browser of entrepreneurs. Like I just have like an email list and a blog. And when I'm feeling like spicy, I get on Twitter. Like I'm like, that's so Netscape of me. But I did open a TikTok account. So that would be like one kind of overarching, which again would get to very similar question to the gentleman who asked before you. It's like, well, what's really behind like, why can't you be disciplined? Like, why do you need willpower? And there's a lot of different studies that like willpower is not even an effective like motivating force. So again, philosophically, like I've said this to some people and they've like shut down a business unit, right? Because they're like, I hated that business. All right, you might not be in the position to do that. So let's answer that question with tactics. The first tactic I would say is to start small. And usually I would say like, if you're at kind of like the CEO founder level, like a lot of 10K work is just thinking. It's like making the time to think, right? Which is like, you could do that, like you could go sneak into the green room and think for 25 minutes, right? You don't even need Wi-Fi for that. So that would be making time to think. I would say for anyone, like even if you're a new college grad, like make time to think. I would start small, 25 minutes a day. And you're just gonna sit and think. For me, it helps to have like a running list of questions that I answer. Some are like, what do I want this business to look like someone asked me, like, what do you want your life to look like in 25 years? Like, it's a good question. I'll be 68 in 25 years. What do I want my life to look like? I mean, there's no harm in asking that question. Some interesting things might reveal themselves to me if I ask that question. It doesn't take that long to answer it to achieve that objective. Or it could be like, what am I trying to get out of measuring our CAC and our CLTV? Like, I could spend 25 minutes with a blank piece of paper answering that question. I've never thought about it. And so do that 25 minutes a day, then you can kind of get into all the different habit formation, have the cue, have like all that. But the real thing is like starting really, really small so the thing doesn't even like, for you, I would say like 25 minutes a week, right? All of you. That's my challenge to you. 25 minutes a week where you get into a room with a piece of paper and a question that you want to answer involving the deep, deep like vision of your business or the deep, deep vision of your life. 25 minutes, once a week. Every single one of you has that 25 minutes. It would be the most important thing you do that week, guaranteed. Then, with the what if was easy, once you start doing that, it's kind of like, I don't know if you meditate regularly or you exercise regularly, like the pain of not doing it becomes more painful than doing it. And so then you're like, I went a week without thinking, what the fuck? Like, so that's kind of the what if, like when I say the what if, they're like, oh, you're being lazy, you're an entitled millennial. I'm Gen X, technically. But like, no, I'm not being lazy. Like, my parents, as I grew up, my dad would say, we may not be the smartest, but we're the hardest working. That's like entrenched in my mind. But that's where the what if it was easy starts to come in. And you're just like, oh, I just sit and think about my business. And then you like pick your favorite entrepreneur. Like they probably sit and think about their business a lot. Yeah, Great question. Yes.
Okay, so my thoughts are kind of evolving as you're speaking, so now I'm trying to figure out how to phrase what I want to ask you. But essentially, I'm thinking about, as I'm structuring this for my own business, well, first I started thinking about delegating. I started hiring in the past few years, so I'm thinking of delegating a lot of these tasks, especially the execution stuff. But then I'm getting a little bit stuck on some of the 10K tasks that, in the space that we're in, it sometimes feels like these vanity metrics that are more of the dopamine hit are required in order to get some of those opportunities. Like people won't open certain doors or even talk to you without certain levels, metrics, subscribers, followers, whatever.
Yep.
So it's like hard to get out of that loop of the dopamine hits because it feels so necessary. I was just wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, well, okay. So you said like a certain door needs to be, a certain amount of vanity metrics need to be hit to open a door. That's a lot. That was unfortunately true even before the internet. But there's a few, I would challenge that. That would be the first thing. Take Cal Newport, right? Multiple best-selling author, no social media, right? It's possible. I'm trying to think of another example. I can't think of one on the spot, but basically challenge the narrative that the vanity metric you think you need to have that door open is actually a true story or a self-limiting belief, right? Because you could say, like, another good example is people spend so much time on their websites, but if you have the right CTA and the right copy, you might be generating 10 times more leads than the beautifully designed Webflow site, right? Look at James Clear's website. It looks like a WordPress theme, like a little bit after the Netscape era, but not that much further. Clearly 2 million subscribers, 5 million, I can't keep track anymore. So again, like maybe there's just a story that like sleek web page, sleek this, sleek that leads to more conversions, right? And then you can go in and like, well, what's the thing about James Clear that makes him so unique is he's actually a phenomenal marketer, right? Like he's testing his copy and tweets and like he's just a robot and like, so that's the thing. That's why he can have a shitty web page because he's doing that. So that's his 10K work. So that would be the first thing. And the other thing would be to just, again, here you do need to use a little bit of discipline, but I rather use the word quotas. So like, I got TikTok and I want to try it out. I feel like it's a little bit irresponsible for me to be in the media business for nearly a decade and have never opened the app. I'm the Netscape guy that like when there's a viral TikTok, I Google it on YouTube and then I watch it that way. So I put it on a burner phone. I don't want to carry that shit around with me in my pocket. Someone just lent me their phone and I wouldn't give them their phone back. Because it was just like, keep going, keep going. And so that is how I set up a quota, which is like, I wear skinny jeans, I'm not gonna carry 2 phones around. So the burner phone's gonna, it's gonna be in the desk, and like when it's time to I don't even know the language. Like my mom used to say, she thought the past tense of tweet was twatted. So I'll try it there, and then I'll kind of see, and I don't know, there were a few little things that people have told me over the past couple weeks that's like, you might be missing something if you're at least not like observing. And so back to Billy's question, I was talking with Marquette, and I said, well, what's the 80-20 of TikTok? And he said, I'm going to quote him, he said, just consume for a little bit. And then he gave me one format to use if you're not used to it. I'm going to have to ask him for it again because I forgot how to do it. But you take like someone else's video and then you comment on it, and like that's a starting point. I'm going to try that for a little bit. I think with me, the thing with TikTok is not going to clear the threshold of what if it was easy. I mean, if Instagram didn't clear it, then TikTok's not going to clear it. And then I'll probably just be like, cool, that was fun, and move on. And I think too that, I don't know, I am a little bit of a kind of woo-woo spiritual, like the universe is working for you type person. And I believe that like, if wherever I need to be doesn't involve TikTok, like I'm still going to get there, right? And if it needed to involve TikTok, I probably didn't want it in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello.
Oh.
Sorry, right here.
Close proximity bias.
I just have some question or two about Notion.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes.
What is your favorite thing to use it for? And do you have like a tip or a trick that you find most people don't know?
Ooh. Favorite thing I use Notion for, yes. It's a very subtle, but we build this in our consulting business. So we hate what we call Frankenmonster documents. And that is when someone sends you a Google link to a Google Doc, and you have to comment in it, but the instructions are in an email, and then there's a separate conversation happening in Slack. Like, and no one knows when it's due. So we hate Frankenmonster documents. They make life miserable. What if it was easy? It doesn't clear the threshold. I'm building the company that I want to work in every day. I don't want Frankenmonsters in my company. And by the way, if you get rid of Frankenmonster documents, your company works much better. So what we do is we do everything in Notion, project management and task management in Notion. I have views on that. It's not for everyone. But we have a concept called the document inbox. So think about this. Like you just finished the quarter, and you want to do a quarterly performance review with a few of the stakeholders on one of your teams. You would initiate a quarterly review document, which is just like sending the Google Doc. And maybe there's 4 questions. How did we do? What did we learn? What could we have done better? Where did we get stuck? And you want the 4 people to answer that question. So originally you would do that through a Google Doc, and then maybe you'd be like, hey, in Slack, just a reminder that like we're getting close to the end of the quarter. In Notion, what we do is we create that same document, but there's a field that's called who are the stakeholders. So I would put you, and I would put Billy, and myself. The 3 of us are stakeholders. There's another column that says review by date. All of our documents have a 7-day review by date. That's the default, but you can pull it in. And so you get it in your document inbox, which is why we don't have emails and barely use Slack. You get this document that says 4 questions, please fill out these 4 questions on our OKR by next Friday. Once you're done, you basically put a stamp, it's like your Notion person, and it leaves your inbox. Billy hasn't done it yet, it's still in his inbox. Once Billy does it, he hits his stamp, it leaves his inbox. If the 7th goes by and someone else hasn't done it, a little flag shows up, like it's not complete. Then we'll use Slack. Actually, we would comment them in the document. We would mention them in the document, like, hey, just so you know, you're 1 day overdue on this review. Go through the review, then all the comments are there. We can then memorialize the document, decide if we need a meeting to talk about it. So we just whip these documents around across the organization. We don't touch Google Docs, we don't touch Slack, we do not leave Notion. So that's my favorite way to use it. And I think it's super underrated. I don't think enough people talk about it. My favorite feature, I just discovered it the other day, is because Notion's so good at sharing pages with the outside world. Do you know Command L? So if you're on a page, you hit Command L, and you like a page like you wanted to share with your client, it automatically pastes the Notion link, copies the Notion link into your clipboard. So then you can go in and then Command V it out. Yes, I assume they're going to kick me out when my time's up. I could talk about this topic for like 10 hours, so I'll linger and we could talk about it then too.
Hey, thanks for this. It's maybe a little bit of tangent, but you'd mentioned a 30-hour work week.
Yeah.
And mornings, off for surfing or other things. Can you talk about that some?
Yeah. It starts off with a why question. And I'm the solo owner of the business. And the why question is, why do you want to start a business? And the reason, again, it's very similar to Kara, sorry. I have young kids. I'm not the 50-50 parent. It's probably like a 70-30. But like, I feed them, I bathe them, I walk them to school, I pick them up, I read them stories. I'm very involved in their lives by choice. That's how I want to be in this phase. I call it the magic window. It's like one day they'll wake up and I won't be their favorite person in the world. Like, I want to maximize that time with them. Once they're not, I was like, I'll go into an office. I'll go travel, business. I'll go to conferences, all that stuff. Like Dad, go. But I'm still in that window, 8 and 5. I'm hoping I have, maybe 4 more years with my eldest in that window. I think 12-ish is when, TikTok becomes their best friend. So that's why that was one of my key reasons for being an entrepreneur, was to live. So it's flexibility, it's reduced hours, and it's also presence. Like when I'm with them, like when I'm with you, I am with you. Like, And if I got Frankenmonster documents fucking living up, like consuming my mind space, like I'm not with you, I'm with Frankenmonster. And so everything we've designed is around, by the way, guess what? I want that. Guess who else wants that? My team wants that, right? Their parents, they have caretakers and so on and so forth, right? Obviously we want to make money. But money is probably, at least on the founder level, is not even second. The second is, if I made more money, I would want more free time. So instead of working a lot, having not a lot of free time, but more money, to then buy back my free time, I'd rather make less money, have more free time, and just keep that going. Right? And on top of it, bonus round if you love what you do. Like, I don't think about retiring. Like, this is cool. You know, whatever. I don't even know. We're Saturday at noon right now. Like, I'm, talking to a bunch of strangers at a conference, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So it's kind of like there's like it starts with that why, right? And then we want to make money. But guess what? If you put all those pieces in place, you're going to make a lot of money. Like, you're going to attract the best talent, you're going to retain the best talent, you're not going to have all the burnout issues, the great resignation. You're going to be the beneficiary of the great resignation, not the driver of the great resignation. And so it comes back to that intentional design. Then in the 30 hours, it's just like, if you get rid of Frankenmonster documents, if you get rid of bullshit meetings, if you get rid of bullshit process, and if you have good communications, good one-on-ones, 30 hours is plenty. It's a lot of fucking hours. And we self-select with a very, like, we are fully remote. None of our colleagues have ever met in person. And so we have very strict, not strict, we have very defined guidelines. Carl Jung said, until you make the subconscious conscious, it will dictate our lives and we'll call it fate, right? Think about that in a company, right? Unspoken norms. Right, so we go, like, if someone sends you a Slack message, we have a document that says the response time for a Slack message, who wants to guess? 4 hours. So you can't chat. Slack is not for chatting. It's kind of like the way other people use, like how we used to use email in the 90s. So we go through the effort of removing all of those frictions, the Frankenmonster documents, this 20-page guide. We have off-grid vacations, on-grid vacations. So you go on vacation, are you off-grid or on-grid? If you're off-grid, you have like zero expectation to check anything, but you might actually delegate your email inbox to a colleague so that you can be off-grid. I don't like taking off, I'm the founder, so it's a little bit harder for me to take an off-grid vacation, but we have that common language now. And so people are like, oh, they actually do, most of the time they don't want an off-grid because it's a little bit more stressful when you come back, you're kind of like, oh, what, it's like avalanche of notifications. Like, you'd rather just check your email in the evening, as long as the expectations are clear. And so I think that if you get all of that right, I don't know, now I'm like going off piece, but I think if you get all of that right, you have we're still figuring out our business model. Like, have half of a business model and you can attract qualified people, like, you're gonna make a lot of money.
Kate, you're like opening up new worlds to me here, so I want to thank you for that too. And you mentioned
it's like this, the Chicago Bulls thing, right? Like, you'll never see that logo.
Exactly.
That's what I'm here for.
You can't unsee it. So, and you mentioned the time, so I checked the clock, and we've got 10 more minutes.
Nice.
So I'm just going to ask away. I think I'm about to ask you about surfing.
Okay.
The importance of that, and I'm fascinated by your ability to step back and think deeply about things, and I'm wondering if the way that you design your time just for reflection is part of that. But a particular context that I'm coming from, so what I do is I blog, I create math materials. I want every classroom in the world to be cheering math joy everywhere. So that's what I do. But separately, I have epilepsy, and I want to start a podcast about living with epilepsy that would probably make no money. And these are two very different lanes. And I wonder about, like, is there just not time to do a separate project because everything takes so much time. But I have this nagging suspicion that this other project activates a completely different part of my brain, and that would actually refresh me and fuel me in this other area rather than adding on another thing. So I think I'm asking you about, like, when you go surfing or when you step back, does that give you this this superpower of space to reflect on your priorities? Or how do you do that? That's kind of the vein I'm asking about.
It's not, I mean, surfing helps, but it's definitely not surfing. So here's I got to step back and give a little bit of my background here. And so my dad left Cambodia before the war, got a scholarship to go to France, met my mom in France, who's half Cambodian, half French. They get married in France. My dad gets shipped to New York City, where he works at the UN as an internal auditor. I bring this up because during that time period, my entire side of my dad's family was killed in the genocide. And my dad is kind of what you would expect of a 74-year-old Asian man who's kind of left the country of horrendous shit. Trap door on that stuff. Never seen him cry, doesn't talk about it, and it's just, he's he's taking all that to the grave. I bring that up because I grew up, kind of skater kid in the New York City. Is a very different way, but I still internalized a lot of those beliefs. One that I had to unlearn was that for something to be great, it has to be hard, right? My dad we may not be the smartest, but we're the hardest working. I might as well have that tattooed on my arm, because he literally said that to us every fucking day. So I bring that in context because they don't reflect. There's no culture in our house, in our household upbringing. There's no culture of reflection. There's no culture of sitting with sadness. There's no culture of being vulnerable. It's just steel trap doors. Take your emotions and just stuff them as deep as you can. I bring this up because I kind of had that mindset for probably until I left Wall Street. Where just no pain, no gain. I'll sleep when I'm dead. All that kind of crazy shit. Through some act of grace or divine intervention or something, I had this moment where I'm I need to look inwards. And so I really just started, I started hiring a lot of life coaches, basically. This was in 2014. So I've had different coaching for 8 years plus. So I bring that up because in these coaching sessions, they are constantly, it's the beauty of coaching, which is why a lot of our work has elements of coaching. It's a constant, why do you want the thing you want, right? And is there some kind of lingering pain or lingering hurt beneath it? And so I've been coached for 2 to 4 hours a month for a decade or 8 years through different Buddhist philosophies and different more somatic thinking, and so it just I've spent probably $50,000 on coaching over the past 8 years. One of my last that's outside of business coach. I get a lot of business coaches too. One of my last coaches is a philosopher. And we would so anytime we would talk about some question, I'm really jealous that my friend sold his company for $200 million. And he's like, well, what does envy mean to you? And I was just oh, seriously? Are we gonna, this is but you start to unpack, and it would always, that's why when this gentleman here asked what's behind the desire to control, I'm just ego death. I didn't know that so clearly, but it's so obvious to me because we've it shows up in so many ways. It shows up in my competitiveness. It shows up in my perfectionism. It shows up in my desire to be heard. It shows up in my content calendar. It's so obvious that's such a deep unmet need that I have through this ongoing reflection. We've extended that. I was telling some folks yesterday, we've started seeing a child therapist for our 4-year-old, and we've learned so, to me, it's learning about yourself. It's less so now. Definitely when I was in my 20s, it had a stigma that you were broken, and maybe we're all broken, and we've just come to be at peace with that. But yeah, I've learned so much about myself, about my wife. She's learned about me, about our kids through different modes of therapy and coaching and so on. And so it's just been a financial and mostly a time investment. Because a lot of people go to a life coach and they'll be like, do it for a year, and they're like, okay, like I'm fixed. It's like I'm no longer a perfectionist. And then like it's not really true. Like you just kind of shifted, it's like you shifted that part, to like some other part of your body, and it's just gonna show up in a different way. Like you're gonna like kick a dog or that like crosses you the wrong way or something like that. So it's just moving around through you, and so like learning to like connect with those things. So that, like I said, I always answer. My default is to answer questions through a philosophical lens first, and then answer it through a tactile lens second. So may I answer your second question about like the two different projects? Or do you want to follow up on that?
Sure. So I'm just
Verbal
thinking, like,
vomit.
what I hear is having a second project could be like overwhelming, but my suspicion is that having a second project in a very different lane could actually be refreshing to me because I'm using a different part of the brain.
I would go back, and it sounds like you've thought about it as like, why do you want the second project? Because oftentimes, I'm not saying you do it, but I do it. It's like, oh, I want to start like a fellowship program to teach people how to write. It's like, that's more of an ego project than a philanthropic, like a do good for the world project. And so I need to gut check myself on that. And that's where the reflection comes in. Because again, like I want to keep building up my ego. Like it feels good. It's like dopamine. And so having like understanding the purity and also acknowledging that you might just not know, right? And being very quick to be like, it's like this tension. It's like long enough that you give it a chance to like really show, like I get out of the honeymoon period of the project, but short enough that you don't marry the project if it's the wrong project, right? And so kind of like finding that delicate balance would be my recommendation. But I'm all for experimentation, especially like if you're very, like I like tend to have like a hypothesis in my head. Sometimes I'll write it down, but like you have a hypothesis. Like the hypothesis is that these two projects will be energy additive versus energy diminutive. And give yourself 3 months and every month journal, like was this energy additive or energy, it's gonna be pretty obvious to you.
Okay. Thank you. This entire session is so helpful, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure is mine. Yes, Justin.
Thanks for doing this, and we were talking a little bit yesterday, so you have some context, but I made the transition probably 6 months ago to go from me as the face of everything to having an education company. Mm-hmm. So did you have a $10,000 question that you asked as you were starting to make that transition, and any things to keep in mind?
Yeah, it's a really hard question. I'm very visibly the face. Like that blue T-shirt is like, it's like I wear that during my courses and my talks. Like my team can't like get a copy made for them. Like it doesn't work that way. So it does come back to a question. So a business 10K question that I'm always asking myself is, what does this business look like without me? And so that influences how I might think about hiring. That influences how I might think about products. For example, recently I've got a few like exited founders. I used to do a lot of like money coaching, like psychology of money. So a few kind of exited founders have come to me and they're like, hey, can you do like a mastermind for like, us poor souls with FU money that can't get out of our heads. And it would be very lucrative, no marketing, no funnels, no nothing, no recording, super easy. But it doesn't clear that threshold. It's not getting us closer. Then we're doing that same thing. Well, we can make a bunch of money. It's like working to make more money to buy back free time. So we'd be in that same hamster wheel. And so that project gets nixed. Meanwhile, we've seen a recurring question that's like, I don't know how to hire a VA. And I'm not sure that's probably a pretty competitive marketplace, but that's a product that does it, like you don't even need to know I exist for that product to be successful to our platform on that audience. It might not make as much money. It might, there's going to be a lot of machinations. So how does this business look without me? I could add one more level of specificity. in our OKRs for our marketing team, which is me, and a junior marketing person, one of the 10K questions is, how do we create a sustainable marketing engine that doesn't involve Khe's face, voice, or likeness? So immediately, YouTube, podcasts, TikToks just get thrown out the window. So what's left? Ghostwriting blog posts, SEO, Facebook ads, like that kind of stuff. And just that, I don't know if we're gonna do any of it yet, but just that question made it like it makes it so clear where you're walking into a trap, right? With that high-priced mastermind, I'm walking into a trap. And so I need to like really push myself with more 10K thinking, more product design questions around this. Like, I've got a really talented team. Like, probably you actually made me come up with this on the spot, but the 10K question I need to be asking myself now is, what product can I build around one of my team members? That's probably what I should be thinking about now. And think about the leverage in that.
Don't you think eventually that team member will move on? Or do you need more of like...
If I have a belief, so I'm repeat because it might be hard for you to hear. It's Claire, right? Claire asked, I was like fanboying because I love Claire's podcast so much. So Claire's question is, well, what if that employee moves on? And so one of our values at our company is we are humans first and workers second. If someone moves on because of some skill that I taught them, fuck yeah, we won. Like we reached our business mission. And I'll tell you a story about that. Dean Smith from North Carolina, college basketball, storied, one of the best college basketball programs in the world, in the country. He had a rule where if you asked to leave like after freshman year to go into the NBA, where you would make like $15 million the first year or whatever, he would encourage you to go if he thought you would be picked in the first round. Right, so think about it. This is the best program in the league with the best players in the league, and he's encouraging just the best ones, because they're the only ones that can get drafted in the first round, to leave. Now you could be like, he's killing the business, right? But the halo effect that created around the program, putting aside, it's the right thing to do, especially for a young man or young college athlete. But the halo effect and the flywheel that you produce, where like, I mean, people know, they're like, wait, that guy encouraged his best player to leave and left a gaping hole in his roster maybe for like 2 years till they replaced him for the good of this young man. Think about that. Think about the message that sends to all the future hires. There's a lot of long game in that. So I'm of a philosophy that like, I'm a very like rising tide lifts all boats mindset. And I think that in the short term, you might take a hit. Like North Carolina probably had a bad year the next year, but over 20 years, they're the best program in college basketball. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.